Hello and howdy, everyone. Here to talk about the Stanley Kubrick film, The Shining. I've seen it so many times, I don't even know how many times I've seen it. Too many to remember. It's highly influential from my youth. This was my first opportunity to see it on the big screen. It's Halloween time, and Halloween was actually yesterday. You know, there's plenty of programmings, probably even in smaller cities that have good Halloween programs going on. And this week I got to catch two classics on the big screen, so I was relatively happy. So first being The Shining. I'd never seen The Shining on the big screen. This was a digital presentation in 4K. It looked fantastic, you know, razor sharp, crystal clear, which I kind of enjoyed. I thought it suited the film rather well, you know, seeing that, you know, color is kind of so important, and just it added this maybe just extra layer of surrealism. It just like, well, you know how you look at something digital and it just something about how it's like older. The Shining was released in 1980, which doesn't make it like super old, but still, it takes that, you know, there's no grain, there's no grit to it, but yet taking it out and making it sharp and crystal clear just kind of made it seem a little bit more ethereal somehow. I enjoyed it. I just enjoyed seeing it on the big screen, really. It was a big screen, so I really liked it. Sat near the screen so that it would occupy my field of vision, fill my field of vision. Good crowd. I'd say maybe a third full. I'll go with a third. Decent crowd. It was in the middle of the day. But yeah, you could tell that the people who were there were fans. So it was an enjoyable experience. I love The Shining. It's a 10 for me. I mean, maybe I wouldn't argue with you if you gave it a 9 or something like that. You know, it is slower. You know, it is more mental, but I think it's just its influence can't, you know, be denied. It's one of the great horror films. You can pretty much stop watching here if you want, just because I think it's one of the great horror films. It's from my favorite director, Stanley Kubrick, and you know, you just should see it. For me, it's a 10. I just have to tell the story of my first experience with The Shining. My family and I'd say I was around the age of, I'll say 12. You know, I was around the age of 12. My family religiously would stop at National Video to rent videos once a week. I guess primarily for me. And there was I guess this would have been around, you know, maybe 1990, you know, probably about 10 years after The Shining was released. I don't know why. Perhaps it was around Halloween time. But I walk into National Video one day, and I always watched, you know, they have a TV playing trailers for all the movies that have just come out on tape or what have you. For some reason, one of those trailers, they just show the trailers on the tape. One of those trailers was The Shining. Again, I have no idea why The Shining was put in there, you know, 10 years, probably 9 years after it had been on VHS, you know, or maybe in 1981 VHS wasn't around. I'm not sure. It had to have been. Anyway, and the trailer for The Shining is just the blood of, the elevator full of blood. You know, usually the blood gets off on the third floor. So that's just the trailer, and I was watching this string of trailers, and then all of a sudden this creepy music comes up, and it's an elevator, and the elevator slowly starts to open, and the hallway is filled, flooded with blood. And just watching that image has stuck with me to this day. And in that moment, I said, well, I need to see this. I wanted to know how the elevator got on, or how the blood got on the elevator. I was just like, what was that? I wanted to see it again. In fact, I'm pretty sure I just stayed there until the previews looped back around to show The Shining again. It just blew me away instantly. And in that moment, maybe it was my first exposure to Stanley Kubrick. I don't really remember having much exposure to Stanley Kubrick before that. But The Shining was my initiation, and the trailer for The Shining even more so. And I just had to watch it. Having watched The Shining for the first time at around the age of 12, I was incredibly terrified. I was scared of my own home. It really set a bar for me in terms of horror, and what I really, really want out of horror is the thing about The Shining. And it even worked while I was leaving the theater. The thing about The Shining is it makes me, and maybe I could speak generally, but it makes you scared to walk down a hall. That's it. All you have to do is walk down a hall that no one else is in, and it's suddenly something else. It's suddenly creepy. And then when it's time to turn a corner in that hallway, it's like you're even more terrified. I was terrified, mortified to turn corners after watching The Shining. I thought, well, I'm going to turn this corner, and there's going to be some twins there, or there's going to be, an axe-wielding maniac. I was terrified of something ordinary. And that's what I've always looked for in horror ever since then, is I want to be absolutely scared about something that's not scary. Something as ordinary as walking down a hall now can't be done without getting incredibly nervous. And turning a corner, a blind corner, you're thinking of other ways you can go without turning that corner. Can I at least take a wide berth and peek at least? So that's what The Shining did to me, is it made me afraid of my own house, afraid to be alone in my own house. And I was an only child, and my parents both worked, so I was alone a lot. And to this day, it still makes me afraid to turn corners. And what I meant in the theater is, after the movie was done, and you have to walk down that long hallway, out of the theater, and then take a corner to go to the door. That's what I'm talking about. Is even when I was walking out of that theater at the age of 35, I'm still thinking, is it going to be okay when I turn this corner? When I turn this corner, is something going to be standing there? I just can't help but think it. I think The Shining is amazing. I think, that's pretty much enough said. Critics of The Shining complain about Jack Nicholson's performance, and I will give them that. Jack Nicholson's performance is, I believe, in no way grounded in reality. It is in no way subtle. It's practically a Broadway theater playing to the back row, kabuki level body movements, instead of the normal, traditional, subtle, nuanced film acting. That's why I mentioned, in theater you play to the back row, and, in film you play to the camera. And not even that, you just play to like 5 inches, 3 inches in front of your face, or to the other actor. It just has to be minimal at best. But, if you saw Jack Nicholson's Jack Torrance out in the real world, I mean, he'd be incredibly frightening. You want to keep away from him. You'd be, again, that doesn't exist. It's in no way real. It's just, and maybe, that's the thing, is like, he was always kind of psychotic to me. And maybe I've seen the film so many times, and I'm still not, like, it's still a head scratcher to me. It's still, he's always been the caretaker. So I think, well, is this all going on in his head? Is this just, is he a ghost and it's just replaying out his memories? He's always he doesn't have far to go. But, I mean, even when we meet him, he's already kind of sarcastically vicious. There's already this hint of, a demonic presence. This evil that it creeps up from within. And that's always there. You can see that from the get-go, and it just, explodes, later on. But, there's just no attempt to be subtle. There's no attempt to make a great transformation. Because, from the start, well, this guy's, messed up. He's going to go crazy. Just because he's already acting a little bit crazy from the get-go. So it's not like, oh, wow, this guy's awesome. He's a great dad. We love him. And then he turns into a psychotic, raving lunatic. It starts out where he's kind of a sarcastic asshole and, not nice, and then just kind of goes big. So there's not, I don't think we ever really root, for Jack Torrance. We're always rooting for Wendy, always rooting for Doc. So and Jack Torrance is kind of our main character, and probably who we spend the most time with. And I don't know, I can see that where, but it's also what made Jack Nicholson Jack Nicholson. I mean, Jack Nicholson is still, I think the most iconic imagery of Jack Nicholson is from The Shining. Both with him, shoving his face through the door, or being frozen out in the maze. When you think of Jack Nicholson, I mean, maybe you might think of the Joker, because the Joker is an iconic character. But most likely, you probably think of The Shining. The Shining and Jack Nicholson's performance made, Jack Nicholson more iconic. He was already a star, but I think it just put him, on another level, He's still, he got roles for that. He still gets roles, wanting that Jack Torrance feel. So it still is an iconic performance in an iconic film. So I can't, you could, but people, say that the performance is just way overblown and in no way in touch with reality, and I have to give them that. I have to give them that. But it's still just fantastic. All the acting is good. There's for a bulk of this movie, 3 people in it. Jack Nicholson and I just forget her name. Shelley Duvall. Thank you, brain. I can't remember the little kid's name, but and Scatman Crothers is also in it. All the acting is good. Stanley Kubrick, famously abusive to his actors. He would do countless takes. I think The Shining actually holds the record for most takes. I'm no good with numbers. I certainly can't remember them, but it's something like 87 takes. There's a scene in here where Shelley Duvall is smoking a cigarette, talking with a child psychologist or a child counselor who comes to see Danny. And that scene, something like 90 takes. And that's a lot. That's a lot. Even something I think also in this Shining, where she tries to open a door, she had to do that like 60 times. And all it was like opening a door. I've always thought that method, that technique, is so that actors forget even more about what they're doing. When you say a word, and no matter what the word is, if you keep repeating that word, it becomes odd. It loses its meaning. It loses its power in a way. It just becomes this succession of sound. And I believe that that's what Kubrick was after. Kubrick wanted the repetition to be so great that the actor pretty much loses any and all consciousness of what they're actually saying until it becomes reflexive. It's memorized, obviously, and reflexive, and eventually to the actor loses all meaning and becomes a rhythmic succession of sound. And hopefully some type of emotional, and no matter what emotion it is, something will have to come through after all of that. At least that's kind of my theory of why he, did take after take after take after take. And again, was legendarily abusive to his actors. And I think that it's because he wanted the actor to disappear, and he wanted the other, the spiritual to come through, and to not waste any type of mental thought on what the words mean and what they are, or what words that I'm saying. It's just the pure emotion and the reflex of the natural actor. And I think that that's what he was going for, by doing that. I think that that's what any director is going for by doing excessive multiple takes, is just the, loss of the self. It's beautifully shot. The cinematography is gorgeous. Just any aspect of the film you could think about to talk about, I would, find something to love about it. It looks great. One of my favorite aspects of seeing a movie on the big screen, and I think it's more important, than any other aspect, is the sound. I think I have a fairly good sound system here in my home, but it is nothing, compared to what a, movie theater can do, what a, whatever. I think 4K is a visual, style. I don't know if there's like 4K audio. I know there's like 7.1 audio. I don't know what the audio system is, but the sound, I have never noticed the score and the sounds that permeate this film more than I did while watching it, on the big screen. All the little things that I never noticed before, and I'm not saying that, I know everything about The Shining or what have you, but everything that I hadn't noticed before had to do with sound. I swear, like, half the time when people would go into a room or whatever, I don't know if it was an instrument or, a Foley effect but I swear that it sounded like the house, the room, was breathing. You know, like there is some type of low resonating bass that to me resembled, you know, the inhalation and the exhalation of air. And I was just like, what is that? You know, it was super creepy. And I was just like, oh, you know, it's the house and it's breathing. You know, the house is alive, and you know it's excited because it's got its new victims. It has someone new to play with. And that, I mean, the sound really, really got to me, really freaked me out. And I think more than anything establishes the mood and feel of this film. You know, the music and sound is so important to this film. And to hear it on those glorious theater speakers was just, you know, magnificent. And it just added so much more. And I think it's, you know, the real reason why you should see your favorite movies in the big screen is because, you know, you will hear things that you've never heard before. And that's fantastic. Also, with the big screen, you know, I noticed subtle, you know, emotional tics. I never really noticed all the little emotional facial nuances of the twins. You know, always, you know, especially when I was a kid watching it on VHS, you know, you can barely make out anything on a VHS. And even, you know, I have a Blu-ray copy. And even on the Blu-ray, I really can't get that, you know, those emotional feels or shots. I guess I noticed a lot more about tone this time, about how this really is a movie about a family falling apart. You know, I mean, that's what it is. This is a horror movie. You know, this is a horror movie dealing with a haunted house that only has one supernatural occurrence. And that's the opening of the door, you know, to let Jack Torrance out of the pantry, you know, and maybe he even broke out. You know, we don't get to see that door again, so maybe it's just mangled beyond, you know, repair. But there's only one supernatural occurrence. Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you don't count, you know, the actual Shining itself, you know, but there, you know, again, there's only, in a haunted house movie, there's only one physical action done by a ghost, and it's to open a door. So this film is about the you know, the loss of love, the power of addiction. Basically, it's just your worst dysfunctional family nightmare scenario, and it is about, you know, the duty of fatherhood, you know, the pressures that come with that, the challenges of staying in love, you know, making it work. You know, it's a very emotional film, and it's about family. And it's about the destruction of family and the loss of family through, you know, your own sin, you know, in a way. You know, it's like, again, there's no one to blame but yourself. Try as you might, you know, to blame someone else, it all comes back to you. You know, it all comes back to you. I'm running out of time. I've talked for damn near 25 minutes about one of my favorite movies. Hopefully I've said something fresh. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. I greatly enjoyed watching it on the big screen. I'm so happy that I finally got to see it on the big screen. It's fantastic. Even something, like 35 years later, it's still, you know, an amazing film, and just looked beautiful, and just gives you something to think about, something to talk about. It's just a masterpiece of modern cinema. All right, I got to wrap it up. That's Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. It's a hefty Hall of Fame. I give it a solid 10. Thanks much.